Lechem, this is Rabbi Moshe Otero, Ways of Israel, and just want to throw some thoughts here in our audience here on Facebook, Ways of Israel, and that is Purim, which is quickly approaching, the time in which the lots were done, were shot, and Hashem decided to save the Jewish people in the midst of the entire Persian community. Even though the Jews in Persia, you might say, may not have necessarily merited it, yet we see that Hashem's hand saved the Jews out of the predicament of the entrapment of Haman. And thus we are reminded every year of this great miracle, this great salvation, similar to that of Hanukkah, in which Hashem saved the Jewish people out of Persia, which today is Iran. Interesting place, isn't it? That we still have these same areas, regional areas, having the same problem over the Jews. So we're also reminded to increase our joy over the salvation that the Jews had light in the midst of darkness. Again, that's a theme that runs throughout Hanukkah as well as Purim. And then we come with the issue of Mashiach. Interesting enough, Mordecai was not of the descendant of Yehuda. He was a Benjamite, yet he identified himself as a Jew. I am a Jew. The whole nation of Persia, the Persian kingdom, all later, after being saved from the hands and the entrapment of Haman, was able to celebrate the great liberty and freedom that Hashem created for the Jewish people. They almost got their neck cut off, as it were, in the gallows. Yet, we see Hashem coming through once again for the Jewish people in the midst of a very difficult time. Then we have the concept of Mashiach. This concept of Mashiach, which runs from the time of David HaMelech all the way to the present age, in which we have not as of yet seen the revelation of the true Mashiach. And I say revelation in the sense of actually setting up his dynasty, having the dynasty of King David re-established as an earthly reality here on earth. Yes, we've had many could have beens and would have beens and should have beens, but all of them, to even the last one, failed to achieve what is required of the Mashiach. But we know and we still hope, although he may tarry, that he will come, that Hashem will send him in the appropriated and propitious time. We know that many have attempted to try to force Mashiach to come and only have encountered failure in such pushing of the divine hand. Something that Daniel, the book of Daniel, already stated, that there would be many in this period of time that would try to push the arrival of Mashiach and in fact would try to set up a messianic kingdom and would fail. My friends, since the time of Daniel, since the time of the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash, we have seen time and time again how could have been, would have been descendants of David attempted to reestablish the throne of David until this time has miserably failed. What will make the fact that Mashiach will be successful, will be in the action of seeing the establishment of his monarchy in the land of Eretz Israel and in and within the current status of the present government, which means our eyes should be looked at what's happening in Israel regarding the governmental changes that will be required once Mashiach is revealed and is made known. Now, some and many of the religious Jewish people are looking for a spiritual Mashiach, as the Rambam mentions that he will bring the hearts of the children back to Shuvah in the whole campaign of doing Shuvah. And there is no necessary connection in the mindset that he will have an actual physical government. But in fact, all the prophets only refer to Mashiach in those terms, as an actual literal physical government that will arise as a result of God's appointment and God's assignment and God's doing. Same thing that happened during Purim, that everything that happened with Mordecai, that he eventually became almost like second king in Persia. But this time it will happen to the Jews in its own land of Eretz Israel, and everyone will see and know who God's appointed, God's anointed is. So take a look at our history for a moment, would you? Take a look at all of the great dynasties of Eretz Israel, including the most recent one. None have succeeded to be declared king of Israel. None, although they may have been of the royal line. None have succeeded. What makes Mashiach different from all of those could have beens and would have beens, even the Rabbi of Lubavitch made it very clear. It will not be who tried to do the work or who started the work, who initiated the work. It will be the one that will be given the title of HaMashiach, the one that completes the complete task, not partial task. That includes the other point I wanted to make, the war against the Amalekites. This week we begin to read the portion of the Torah that talks about remember, Zachar. Remember what the Amalekites did to you. God declares war on the Amalekites because they weren't necessarily good people. It was an evil and wicked lineage in which God declares war continuously from generation to generation. Now, interesting enough, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and I'm making reference to him because of what I had heard many years when he was alive, and stated to a point in which he said and he believed that the Palestinians were the Amalekites. And my first question and response when I heard that was to his emissaries, if he believes that the Amalekites are the Palestinians, well, there is incumbent upon a Jew to kill an Amalekite. Why doesn't he do a campaign to erase the Palestinians off the face of the earth? Obviously, there must have been some doubt, some question as to the veracity, whether the Palestinians were in fact the Amalekite tribe or group of people. The bottom line is, unless we know for sure who are the Amalekites, we cannot fulfill that commandment which is incumbent upon the true Mashiach. Thus, in two levels we find and see, at least I did, that in fact this person wasn't Mashiach, and therefore there was doubt, sufficient doubt to be able to say, this group of people are Amalekites, we got to go and destroy them. And when it talks about the war of the Lords, we understand very clearly it's a literal war, not a spiritual war, utilizing mitzvah tanks and mitzvah software and illusions of allegorical armies. When the Torah tells us that we must erase the memory of the Amalekites, it's referring to a group of people that are contrary to the very values of Torah, the very values of Israel, the very value of the essence of every single Jew, which is God. It's a war against God. These individuals who are identified in Torah as the Amalekites is in fact the Yetzer Hara in an actual form. It is what embodies every evil thought, every evil intention, and everything that opposes God and God's will on earth. And thus, when it makes itself manifest and we know who they are, we Jews are to eradicate that. But where do we start? We eradicate it from within ourselves, first of all. And then we'll be able to identify who they are outside of ourselves. The biggest problem that we have, obviously, is that we are our own enemies. We are the worst enemies for our own sake. And thus we need to eradicate that wrong within us in order to be able to eradicate the wrong outside of us. We need to begin from within. No doubt about that. And until it is identified, which will be identified during the time of Mashiach. This is what makes all of the previous could have been, would have been a complete failure, in that they were not able to properly identify and properly conduct the war of the Lord in its proper time. Now, many of you have already heard many rabbis come out and say Mashiach is going to come in the year of Rosh Hashanah, 5782. Some have heard 2021 will be the year. And we hear all of these quote-unquote Kabbalists, predicting and promising the Jewish people it will be at this date. And they even has the justification saying, well, we don't have to succumb and be judged by the warnings of the Talmud that you should not give dates of the coming of Mashiach because we are in the end times, and thus they feel the freedom to be able to give dates. Let me say that is not correct. That is completely incorrect. The sages warned us not to give time because nobody knows the time. No matter if you see it in a vision or you had a dream or somehow spiritually illuminated, some type of ecstasy occurred to you that you feel the need to be able to say, he's coming at 1 o'clock on Rosh Hashanah right after davening Mincha. No, my friends, these are sheker foreseers. And the way we prove that, time. Ibn Ezra said time will prove everything. Time will tell everything. And in fact, that's exactly where I position myself in. We want Mashiach, no doubt. We will wait and we will be patient to wait his true coming at God's appointment time, not man. You may want to rush by making a whole campaign to beg Mashiach to come, to ask Hashem HaKadosh Baruch Hu to send him. We do have that right to call out to God, to plead and to beg and to implore for him to send Mashiach. But the bottom line, and no matter what we may do, it is Hashem, it is God who decides when and at what time he will come. And up to this moment, as far as I'm concerned, there is no prophet alive among us now. There is no Navi that has been predicting the future or even predicting the present future to be able to say, well, we can rely on this person to be truthful. All that we have seen so far are failed prophecies of so-called well-intended rabbis and Kabbalists, but they failed miserably. Do you remember? I'm going to remind you. When Aaron Sharik was alive, the words were going around that as soon as he dies, Mashiach will be revealed. He died, Mashiach was not revealed. And how much more time are we going to continue to rely on rabbis and Kabbalists in their false prediction of a Mashiach's coming's date, and he never shows up? Oh, they tell you, all you have to do is open your eyes and see. No, we have opened our eyes and we see diddly squat. We don't see it happening. Yes, we need to ask Hashem. Hashem, reveal, show what we need to perfect in us. Bring your Mashiach already. Hasn't over 2,000 years been enough? Hasn't all of the tortures and persecution and death that we have undergone not enough? Die! Now we're in Purim. It's supposed to be a time of happiness, of joy. What greater joy could it be to see the coming of Mashiach even on Purim and celebrating the victory of good over evil? But we must caution every single part of our hope with the words of the Rambam. Although he tarries, I shall wait. I hold strongly to the faith of what the Rambam taught, that we should be patiently waiting for the coming of Mashiach, even though he may tarry. Because for us, he's tarrying. But for Hashem, God knows exactly the date and time he's going to send him. And when he does it, it's going to be done completely imperfect, and he will be successful as his father, King David, was successful in all the things that he put himself to do, because God was with him, and God will be with the true Mashiach. So don't put your hopes in a human being who claims to be Mashiach and later on will devastate your hopes and dreams. This is what we've had seen in the past years with the recent Mashiach fervor. Oh, Mashiach, 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 yeah, and the proclamation of Yahi. He's not the one. Wake up and let's start planning to bring upon the actual throne of David in Eretz Israel. That's what you should be doing. That's what Jews should be involved in, making sure that the Kisei David is established in the land of Israel. We know there are many descendants of David who would love to take upon that course, but only a successful one will be able to achieve in Eretz Israel the reestablishment of the throne of David. And we're talking about a monarchy. Let's not give any other room for socialist government programs, or that the Mashiach will be a socialist communist that will come in and establish a socialist agenda. A monarchy is a monarchy. And when God reveals to that monarch, to that descendant of David, his plan of how he's going to establish his kingdom, which will be an everlasting kingdom, then we can talk about who is right and who is wrong. Till this day, we are all wrong. And this is why our hearts thrives and desires the Emet HaMashiach to be revealed quickly in our times. No, it will not be J.C. Penney. And no, it will not be Mamish. And no, it will not be any of the Reubenites or the Frankists or the Shabbatites V of our past. It will be someone who is living right now, and God will utilize them and raise them up to be that man of God in the moment and time that we need it, and we need it now. No doubt about it. So think about it. Purim, Mashiach, and the Amalekites, they all come into one focus in this period of time. Shalom, shalom, and may you have a Shabbat shalom. And remember, March is where we offer the free conversion for those of you who have already studied and learned and passed the test. Yes, I send you a test. So make sure, if you're interested in that program, to contact me. Send me an email to rabbiotero@yahoo.com, and I'll make sure you get the test in English. You pass it, we work and make sure you know what's required for you to know and learn. And that way we can be able to process you. And remember, we don't accept people who believe in J.C. Penney and want to hold on to J.C. Penney and convert. Okay, that I don't do that. Neither if you believe that the Lubavitcher Rebbe is the Mashiach and you are so enamored you want to convert because of that. No, neither. If you believe in a false Messiah, or a Messiah that didn't do what it was supposed to do, and you hold that to be true, even though it may not be idolatry, it's wrong, and I don't want to take a chance on that, because it is driving you to think it is correct to do that, and it's not. It's an error, it's a mistake, and I will not give my rubber stamp, as it were, as rabbi, as accepting that for your process of conversion. Hopefully I'm very clear with that, and this is a public notice to anyone going through the conversion program that we've offered. So please learn Judaism. I have a whole bunch of materials online. Shalom, shalom.